This is what happens when you get way too close to a US aircraft carrier. No flag, no AIS signal, no response on the radio, just a rusty fishing boat drifting toward 100,000 tons of American steel like it had nothing to lose. First, nobody panicked. Small boats show up all the time in busy waters, especially near choke points like the Red Sea or the Strait of Hormuz. But this one felt off. It wasn't following any traffic pattern. It zigzagged, slowed down, drifted sideways, then picked up speed again. From the bridge of the USS Gerald R forward, it looked less like a lost fishing boat and more like a test. So what do you do when a small boat, possibly loaded with explosives or surveillance gear, ignores every warning? You don't wait to find out because this wasn't a drill. This wasn't a training op. This was live, and the next 10 minutes would show exactly how the US Navy reacts when something sketchy gets way too close to the most powerful ship on the ocean. And trust me, this fishing boat picked the worst possible target. Inside the USS Gerald R, Ford's Combat Information Center, CIC for short, the operator didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The screen already showed it, a small surface contact moving erratically for 1,000 yards out and closing. AIS Automatic Identification System was silent. No ship name, no origin, nothing. That's not unusual in international waters. Plenty of fishing boats don't broadcast. But this one wasn't acting like a fishing boat. It wasn't trolling. It wasn't drifting. But it was heading straight for the Ford's port side, slow but deliberate. Bridge, CIC, contact drifting left, speed under 5 knots, maneuvering erratically. The officer on the deck leaned toward the chart table. The course didn't make any sense. No response on VHF channel 16, either the standard radio frequency for ship-to-ship calls. Flight deck, this is the bridge. Prep Seahawk for launch. Set security alert condition 3. That phrase, security alert condition 3, meant the ship was shifting into force protection mode. Not full combat alert, but definitely not peacetime posture. Below decks, sailors snapped to their stations. Weapons crews checked mounts. Visual watchstanders trained binoculars on the water. The command was clear: watch it, don't trust it. The call went out again, calm but sharp. Seahawk launching. RHIB teams on standby, because in less than 2 minutes they'd get a closer look. On the flight deck, nobody waited for confirmation. Yellow shirts moved like they'd rehearsed it 100 times because they had. The Seahawks' rotors were already spinning, blades blurring the morning haze into a cyclone. Crew chiefs locked in the door gunner. The pilot gave a single nod. Clearance waved, and the helicopter lifted. Below, in the hangar bay, RHIB teams were already loading up. These weren't rubber dinghies. These were 11-meter, high-speed intercept craft, armed, fast, and crewed by sailors trained to board anything, anywhere at a moment's notice. USS Ford wasn't going into full battle mode. Not yet. But every layer of defense was peeling open, slowly, deliberately, like a fist forming. On the bridge, the captain reviewed the incoming track again. Speed, slow. Course. Still creeping toward their port side. Intent. Unknown. That was the problem, because in places like the Red Sea or the Gulf of Oman, this is how it starts. First, it's a boat. Then, it's an explosion. And if it isn't a bomb, it might be a scout or a camera or just a dumb mistake. But until you know, you prepare for all of them. The Seahawk banked hard over the ocean, dropping to a low hover just 200 feet off the water. From the door gunner's view, the fishing boat looked even sketchier. 5 men on board, no uniforms, one standing near the bow still holding that long object. Still no response to hails. The Seahawks pilot called it in. Negative contact. No acknowledgement. Boat remains on course. Back on deck, the RHIB teams waited for the green light. One word from the captain and they'd launch. But first, the Navy was going to give that little boat one last chance, because if it didn't take it, things were about to move fast. The Seahawk edged lower, circling the fishing boat in a wide arc. From above, the water was calm, too calm. The boat rocked slightly in the swell, but made no effort to change course or signal back. No hand waves, no lights, just 5 men watching. The pilot's voice crackled over comms. Possible visual on antenna structure. Mid-deck. Improvised. Unclear purpose. Antennas on a fishing boat. Not impossible, but not good either. Sometimes smugglers rig up old radios to communicate offshore. Other times, it's surveillance gear. And in this part of the world, surveillance is never innocent. The Seahawk's door gunner pivoted his weapon down but held fire, a clear show of force, not an act of war. Below him, one man finally stood, slowly raised both hands in the air. The pilot made another pass and caught it, a makeshift tarp pulled back just slightly. Beneath it, metal tubes, shiny, not fishing gear. Could have been piping. Could have been worse. But that was enough. This wasn't new. This wasn't random. And at this range, guessing was off the table. The order came down, deploy ribs. Eyes on. No engagement unless fired upon. From the starboard side of the Ford, 2 ribs launched within seconds, each crewed by 6 sailors in body armor, rifles at the ready. They moved fast, slicing across the surface like sharks on a mission. No alarms, no sirens, just steel precision and a rising tension in the air. Whatever this fishing boat was, it was about to get a visit. The boarding team wasted no time. The first RHIV pulled alongside, hooks out, sailors up and over the rail in seconds. Orders barked, weapons drawn. The fishermen, if that's what they were pushed down, zip-tied, and searched on deck. The second team began lifting the tarp. What they found: long metal tubes, wires, sat phone, spare fuel tanks. Some of it could pass as fishing gear, but some of it couldn't, not even close. Still no flag, still no ID. Whatever this vessel was doing out here, it wasn't looking for tuna. And now that the Navy had control of the deck, they were about to find out exactly what kind of mess they'd just intercepted. The RHIB team moved fast. One sailor secured the engine controls, another scanned the deck for tripwires or hidden compartments. Every inch of the boat was treated like it could bite, because sometimes it does. The 5 men were zip-tied and seated near the stern, guarded by 2 sailors with M4s ready. None of them spoke English, or maybe they just didn't want to. Either way, the questions could come later. First, clear the boat. The boarding officer opened one of the storage hatches. Inside, jerry cans, loose wiring, cheap radios, a plastic-wrapped pack of documents soaked with seawater and diesel. One of the RHIB crew pulled out a battered sat phone with a cracked screen. The call log showed a number, no name, just digits. It didn't match anything in the open Maritime registry. Then came the surprise: folded beneath the tarp near the stern, a wad of currency, not dollars, not Yemeni rials. Iranian. And that changed everything. Because the moment you find Iranian cash and encrypted radios on a fishing boat drifting near a US carrier group, it's no longer just an intercept, it's a potential intelligence jackpot. Back on the Ford, the CIC received the boarding report in real time, images transmitted via handheld uplinks, gear, documents, faces. Within minutes, intel officers were flagging items for further analysis. Was this a smuggling op, a reconnaissance mission, or something worse? No one knew yet, but the clues were piling up fast. And while the ribs prepared to tow the boat for full inspection, the carrier never slowed down. Planes still launched. Flight deck ops never even paused. Because the Ford doesn't stop for small boats, it moves with purpose. And if something gets in the way, the Navy handles it, then moves on. Once secured, the boat was rigged for tow and pulled toward the nearest escort destroyer for a full sweep. The RHIB teams offloaded the detainees and evidence into custody, fuel logs, electronics, that stack of Iranian bills, all tagged and bagged. On board the USS Gravely, a Navy intelligence team got to work. The sat phone pulled for digital forensics, the radios checked for encryption keys or stored frequencies, the documents translated and cross-referenced. In recent years, U.S. Navy ships have regularly intercepted similar boats, unflagged, underpowered, drifting suspiciously near high-value units. Some carried smuggled weapons, others acted as scouts for missile attacks. In 2022, a fishing boat off the coast of Oman was caught with components for drone systems. In 2023, another was stopped at the Strait of Hormuz. Crew claimed to be lost, but carried encrypted radios and night vision gear. So when this kind of thing happens, it's not just a nuisance, it's a probe, a test to see how close you can get before the carrier reacts, a way to measure response time, radar range, helicopter launch windows. That's why even a single small boat gets the full playbook: visual IDs, radio hails, Seahawk flyovers, RHIB intercepts, full boarding ops. Because if you treat it like nothing, that's when it becomes something. And if this boat was part of a bigger plan, well, it wouldn't be the first time. To most people, a lone fishing boat isn't a threat. But to the US Navy, it's a variable, because when you're operating a 100,000-ton aircraft carrier in contested waters, there's no such thing as a harmless unknown. That's why the USS Gerald R. Ford never sails alone. Every U.S. aircraft carrier operates as part of a carrier strike group, a mobile fortress made up of destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and supply ships. Together, they form a layered defense system designed to detect, deter, and destroy threats long before they get close. And it starts with sensors from the E-2D Hawkeye flying overhead to the Spy-1 radar arrays aboard Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. Everything in the air and sea is constantly tracked, categorized, and evaluated. A skiff with small unflagged vessels approach Navy ships every month. Some are just rigs, others are scouts, worse, floating IEDs looking for stuff. That's why the Navy responds the way it is, not out of because this nation is nothing. You'll know better.